Let's jump to the QoS tab. There is a lot that can be done here, but actually most of what is done here is derived from what is done elsewhere. And for the CCNA exam, you don't need to know a lot about this QoS because most of the time QoS is for advanced configurations. But a few things that you need to know here. First of all, the quality of service QoS best effort value. What this does is that it defines what is the maximum QoS level that you allow on that SSID. And that's something you define in QoS profiles here. So you see, each profile has a different type of applications, so platinum for voice, gold for video, etc. So by associating that profile to the SSID, you say what is the max QoS that you allow on that SSID. If you set a cap to, say, video, everything above video, which is going to be voice, for example, is going to be downgraded to video. So for guests, for example, you may be limiting the max QoS they can get, while for the corporate, you can set a higher priority possibility so that your guests don't try to get higher priority than your corporate users, for example. Background is typically reserved for that kind of guest access. Okay, so default is silver, best effort. But in a corporate environment, it's very common to set platinum as being the max allowed. There are also some other values, AVC, and if you enable AVC, you can also look at the application level, and that will allow you to have a fine-tuning of what kind of priority you want for your application. We'll come back on that, but just to show you, if I go here to wireless, application visibility and control, and go to AVC profile, I just created a quick AVC profile test just to show you what this is. So this profile is going to list applications, and it's going to say what kind of QoS level I want for each of these applications. So for example, here I have MS Link Media, which has a DSCP, intended DSCP of 46, and eDonkey, for which I don't have any DSCP, but I set some rate limiting for that application. So what I can do is go to my SSID, go to that QoS tab, enable AVC, and if I do so, I can call an AVC profile, my test AVC in that case. And that is going to say, I allow up to platinum for every application, but in particular, if it's Link, I'm going to tag that DSCP 46. And if it's eDonkey, I'm going to limit the bandwidth to 2K, which is not much. So you see, AVC is very powerful because it allows you not only to set some values based on users, but also based on applications. So that allows you to prioritize the business applications while still allowing or maybe blocking the applications that are not critical. So that's something which is very powerful. We'll come back more on AVC. And if you do AVC, and if you support AVC, you can also set a net flow monitor, which is a way for you to send statistics about AVC from this controller to a monitoring station where you can have a global view of your network, typically PI. Just below, you have the WMM policy. This is saying, do you want to force your clients, and that would be required, to support QoS? QoS is 802.11 QoS, wireless multimedia, which is defined by the Wi-Fi Alliance back in 2005. Or do you allow both devices that do WMM or do not support WMM, that would be allowed? Or do you disable it, which means that you don't do QoS on that SSID? Today, unless your devices are very old, they will all support WMM. So in most cases, you can set it to required, and that's okay. If your device is 11N, it supports WMM. If it's 11AC, it supports WMM as well. So required is okay in most cases, but the default is allowed in case you have some old devices that may still be not compatible with WMM. But in a normal network, you can start with required and then set it back to allowed if you have some problems. And the last two options at the bottom are for old phones, and they are here for backward compatibility purposes. You should never have to care about those two options. In the same family, there is this policy mapping. So what we did with AVC was to set some precise QoS values or bandwidth allocation based on applications. What you can do in this tab, policy mapping, is to do the same type of logic, set some rules, but not only for QoS, also for access, and not based on applications, but based on device types. So again, we'll spend more time on here. But what happens is that you can associate to the SSID several policies that you define here in security, local policies, and I created here a default policy just to show you. And you see what this policy says is that if my device is an Android or an Apple device, then I can set a specific VLAN value, or a specific QoS value. I can also set some active hours where some rules are valid and some others are not. I can also set some AVC profile or some access control list. You see, based on my device recognition, I can set a specific rule for that device type based on many things, time, etc. So it's a very powerful way to complement AVC, to have rules that are global, that's what you do in QoS, and then set some fine-tuned rules specifically for some devices that you would call from policy mapping.